The name United Nations was coined by United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt and was used in the Declaration by United Nations of January 1942 during the Second World War, when representatives of 26 nations pledged their governments to continue fighting together against what they called the Axis powers. So it officially came into existence on the 24th of October 1945, when the Charter was ratified by China, France, Soviet Union, United Kingdom, United States, and by a majority of the other signatories. And every 24th of October, they celebrate this founding of the United Nations. Alger Hiss, he became the acting Secretary General of the establishment of the United Nations. The April 16, 1945 issue of Time magazine called him one of the State Department's brighter young men. It was Hiss and Joseph E. Johnson who later became secretary of the Bilderbergers. So here we have all the secret societies again, who wrote much of the United Nations Charter. So very high Freemasons, Bilderbergers, were responsible for this charter. Patterning it after the Constitution of Russia and the Communist Manifesto. So the Constitution of the USSR is almost identical to the Constitution of the United Nations, for those who did not know that. Winston Churchill, the creation of an authoritative world order is the ultimate aim towards which we must strive, and the United Nations formed part of that. Charles de Gaulle, who was also instrumental, nations must unite in a world government or perish. So the big figures involved had this philosophy. Then there is a man, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Trygve Lie. The first official UN Secretary General was a high-ranking member of Norway's Social Democratic Party, which was, by the way, an offshoot of the Third Communist International. And then came a man, Dag Hammarskjöld. And he was the second Secretary General. He was a Swedish socialist. He openly pushed communist policy. He was the Secretary General of the United Nations from 10 April 1953 to 1961. Then he met his death in a plane crash. Now, what did he do in the United Nations? Well, one of the first things he did was to produce or create a prayer room. And there it is on the left-hand side. A stone in the middle of the room was placed to tell us we may see it as an altar, empty, not because there is no God, not because it is an altar to an unknown God, but because it is dedicated to the God whom man worships under many names and many forms. The meditation room is shaped as a pyramid, a trapezoid. The meditation room faces north-northeast. To enter the room, one must proceed from darkness into light. Indeed, the middle order of the Satanic Brotherhood is called the Order of the Trapezoid. And Anton LaVey, who is the founder of the Church of Satan, refers to an occult principle known as the law of the trapezoid. So we seem to have a very occult room here. And then came U Thant, the third Secretary General, and he was a Marxist. So here you can see how the philosophy in the beginning was programmed.
In 1947, the United Nations declared that there would be two states in Palestine. There would be a Jewish state and a Palestinian state.
The United States delegation supports the basic principles of the unanimous recommendations by the United Nations, which provides for petition and immigration.
In May of 1948, a new Jewish state, Israel, was born in a bath of blood. Jewish troops routed Arab forces from the city of Haifa in the first of a series of battles that were to reverberate through the years. The new government, headed by David Ben-Gurion, is installed in Tel Aviv. Thus, for the first time since the Roman legion destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, the Jewish people have a nation of their own.
In 1952, John D. Rockefeller III, the oldest son of John D. Rockefeller Jr., founded the Population Council. The Population Council's stated goal is to seek better understanding of the problems related to population. The first president of the council was Frederick Henry Osborn, who was appointed by Rockefeller himself. Osborn was a prominent eugenicist who helped found the American Eugenics Society, which is now called the Society for the Study of Social Biology. Frank Nostein was one of the most prominent individuals who made the study of population an institutional practice. He was a member of the American Eugenics Society, the American Philosophical Society, and the Council on Foreign Relations. He was also the first director of the United Nations Population Division. In a 1969 paper written by Nostein titled The Problem of Population Control, he outlines a strategy to depopulate target populations.
The New Age agenda was to merge God and nature. That's what Teilhard de Chardin, the father of the philosophy of the UN, said. We must become pantheistic, eradicate male-female distinction, world peace, nuclear disarmament, one world government, one world religion. The organizations leading up to this, the United Nations, of course, Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Bilderbergers, Gorbachev Foundation, and the Club of Rome. And they've already put up a constitution which is known as the Constitution for the Federation of Earth. The former director of the World Health Organization, Dr. Brock Chisholm, of course that's also a United Nations organization, says, to achieve world government it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism and religion's dogmas. Your individualism must go, you must become a number. This is Marxism. The state is supreme and you are nothing but a catechumen, a goyim, or nothing. UNESCO is the sub-organization of the United Nations. Julian Huxley is the former director of UNESCO. He was Humanist of the Year. He's a theistic philosopher, member of the Communistic Colonial Bureau of British Fabian Society, and signer of the Humanist Manifesto too. Niebuhr is UNESCO's co-founder, and he signed CIECOS. What is CIECOS? These are the founders. It is the position of CIECOS that contraceptive services should be available to all, including minors, who should enjoy the same rights of free and independent access to contraceptive care as do others. It is the position of CIECOS that the use of explicit sexual material, sometimes referred to as pornography, can serve a variety of important needs in the lives of countless individuals. Under Huxley's guidance, they prepared a guidebook for teachers. Now, I would like the parents to take a note. What is the United Nations Guidebook for Teachers? In the classroom with children under 13 years of age, before the child enters school, his mind has already been profoundly marked, often injuriously by earlier influences, first gained, however dimly, in the home. So UNESCO's aim is to change the mindset of your children, to turn it against any values that the parents might instill in the mind of that child.
Minnesota is on the leading edge of this radical agenda, and we're trying our best to fight against it.
They're pushing a comprehensive sexual education agenda, including the book, It's Perfectly Normal. It is pornography. It is something that even some of my colleagues, men especially on the House floor, did not want to look at. Showing children as young as 4th grade. In fact, it's recommended for 4th graders as their comprehensive sex education. We couldn't show this on the television news, but yet we want our 4th grade children to be looking at this book.
When a child looks at a pornographic image within 0.3 of a second, that's imprinted on his brain and her brain permanently. We know that there's an action that takes place which is called mirroring images, so that children will want to or will act out what they see. In the name of sexuality education, children are seeing obscene materials that have been ruled by Congress and by the Supreme Court impossible to show to children.
Now, what about these world religions? Now, this is the crux of the matter. Now, this is a very interesting man, Robert Miller. He's the former Assistant Secretary General to the United Nations. He wrote, "We must move as quickly as possible to a one-world government, a one-world religion, under a one-world leader." Robert Miller writes, "The underlying philosophy upon which the Robert Miller School is based will be found in the teachings set forth in the books of Alice A. Bailey." So the philosophy is based on Luciferian channeled writings preparing for the coming of Lucifer. No human force will ever be able to destroy the United Nations. For the United Nations is not a mere building or a mere idea. It is not a man-made creation. This is Robert Miller speaking, former Under-Secretary General of the United Nations. If it wasn't man-made, then who made it? At his choice hour, the Absolute Supreme will ring his own victory bell here on earth through the loving and serving heart of the United Nations.
Celebration of the International Year of Light in 2015. And here is a very symbolic symbol of this light in the form of a snake going around her arm. And they refer to that as a hug from our oldest friend, because that is a direct reference to Lucifer giving intellect to Eve in the Garden of Eden. And they're calling him an old friend. And there's some iconography of Lucifer, the snake, deceiving Eve and giving her the knowledge of good and evil.
We turn our attention back to the unraveling situation in Haiti. Last Friday, at approximately 3 in the morning, 400 Brazilian-led United Nations occupation troops in armored vehicles laid siege once again to the impoverished community of Cité Soleil, including when UN troops shot a 6 months pregnant woman in the abdomen, killing her unborn child, and families were shot in their beds when helicopter gunships fired into their homes.
We understand that more than 350 troops went into the seaside shanty town at 4 a.m. in the morning. They went in shooting, firing heavy caliber. We heard that M50s were being fired from helicopter gunships down at the community. Total mayhem. Young children, pregnant women being killed, gunned down by the United Nations.
What the UN has said that there were no non-combatants who were killed during that raid, that they only returned fire after being fired upon. What you see are unarmed civilians who are victims of headshots. Headshots, of course, are meant to kill. The unarmed civilians that we see bleeding to death in this footage are clearly unarmed.
But remember, with the way in which these massacres are similar to 2005 is that when the United Nations goes into this community, they don't bring medical units. Why? Because they are not going in to injure people. The United Nations is going in to kill people, and as you said, this is collective punishment. It is retribution for their holding out and resisting what they call and what they consider a United Nations military occupation of their country.